afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Erika Kynek, and I want to welcome you to the Life Unites Us November webinar, Supporting Veterans with Substance Use Disorder. So I'm going to start today by covering a few Zoom housekeeping items, and then I'm going to move on to an overview of the Life Unites Us campaign. And then we're going to hear from our presenters and information and resources surrounding the work that they are doing with veterans. After we've heard from our speakers, we'll have time for questions, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So this is a reminder that if you do have questions, please enter them into the Q&A feature and not the chat. If you happen to get disconnected from Zoom, please retry the original link. If for some reason you're unable to get back in the meeting, it is going to be recorded and will be sent out later this week. So moving on to learning a little bit more about the Life Unites Us campaign. Life Unites Us is a project developed to reduce stigma around opioid use disorder. This is done by using a people-forward approach that aims to connect individuals through stories. Through research and practice in anti-stigma work, we found that connecting people through their stories and similarities can and will reduce stigma. In order to do this, the team records stories of community members across Pennsylvania, stories of both personal recovery and as an ally to someone in recovery. Short stories are then produced and featured on the Life Unites Us website and social media. The intent is that by sharing stories of hope and resiliency, we can prove that recovery is probable, reducing stigma makes recovery more likely, addiction is treatable, those living with an addiction are just like everyone else, and those living with opioid use disorder are so much more than their disease. So as I mentioned in the last slide, this campaign can be found online, and the website features a library of resources that are shared across social media platforms. And the great news is that you can join us in ending stigma by following and sharing the campaign. So if you're part of a larger organization or effort, we'd love to invite you to become a partner of Life Unites Us. If you're interested, please email Maddie Morales, and we'll make sure to drop her email in the chat box for easy access. Okay, now that we've heard about the campaign, let's move on to the speaker and presentation section of the webinar. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Jennifer Snyder. Jennifer is the grants manager for the Office of Veterans Affairs. Jennifer manages several annual state-funded grant programs that are administered by the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Jennifer graduated from high school in 1997 and went on to obtain a BA in sociology from Millersville University. Jennifer currently resides in Higgins, Pennsylvania with her husband, Scott. They have two teenage children, Sarah and Logan, and Jennifer has worked for the Commonwealth for 21 years. Her Commonwealth career began with the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency, where she worked for 10 years. During those years, Jennifer served in multiple roles, but spent most of her time with the State Grant and Special Education's Office and ended her time there as manager of the Educational Assistance Program. In April of 2012, Jennifer left her position at PHEAA to accept a role as Administrative Officer 2 within the Division of Grants of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. This position directly supported the division chief. After 7 years, Jennifer went on to serve as Division Chief of Grants for an additional 3 years, and then in January of 2023, transitioned into her current role within the Office of Veterans Affairs. As Grants Manager, Jennifer leads the administration of grant programs, which benefit veterans, active service members, and their families in accordance with legislation, annual appropriations, operationally funded initiatives, and joint programs in conjunction with other federal, state, and local governmental organizations, public entities, and community-based organizations and foundations. Jennifer also provides supervision and support to facilitate the effective execution of duties for OVA outreach programs, such as the Governor's Advisory Council for Veteran Services and the State Veterans Commission. Jennifer.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Apologize for that. Thank you so much for the introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you to Penn State and all the stakeholders for allowing us to participate today. It is an honor to speak on behalf of the Pennsylvania Department and Military and Veterans Affairs regarding substance use and reduction efforts, as this topic is consistently referenced within the veteran population. As previously mentioned, I've been working with the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs for 11 years. And although I've been working with various grant programs since joining DMVA in 2012, I did transition into the grants manager role just this past January. In this role, I do manage several grant programs that are administered by the agency. These programs and services offered by the agency and thousands of others across the Commonwealth play a vital role in the health and well-being of Pennsylvania's more than 700,000 veterans, which is the fourth largest veteran population in the nation. Substance use is a challenging topic, as many veterans have experienced substance use disorder that started as a coping mechanism in response to trauma or hardship caused by time in the armed forces. This can be due to a multitude of reasons. Loss of camaraderie, loss of purpose. Upon returning home from service, they may feel these impacts, feel out of touch with loved ones. Behavioral or mental health issues that develop often lead to substance use disorder challenges and can sometimes evolve further, leading to incarceration, financial distress, or unfortunately, self-harm. Because of this, DMVA takes these topics very seriously and is constantly looking at a veteran's whole health, as we understand that many supports are needed to address underlying issues and get an individual on a healthy path. One way we support this effort is by partnering with other agencies and stakeholders. One area that I specifically work with and involved in is the State Opioid Response Grant. These funds were awarded to the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs by the Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, who work with us here at DMVA to award subgrants to organizations supporting veterans with substance use challenges. Many nonprofit organizations around Pennsylvania offer support to combat substance use disorder among veterans and work diligently to reduce stigma of reaching out for help. Our partners understand that taking complex problems requires a network of resources and that we can all work to ease these challenges by collaborating together. With the State Opioid Response Grant funding, DMVA is able to award grants to nonprofit organizations located across the state. A few of the grant recipients have been the Veterans Multi-Service Center located in Philadelphia, the Veterans Leadership Program of Western PA located in Pittsburgh, the YWCA located in Harrisburg, and Just for Today located in Lemoyne. And those are just a few of the organizations that we have partnered with. Since the grant began in 2019, the nonprofits have utilized this funding to expand, strengthen, and offer continued support towards the programs and or services offered to veterans battling substance use addiction. In this case, specifically opioid and stimulant use. And I'm sure the guest speakers will get much more detailed than that. To date, an astounding 3,000 veterans located across 44 different counties have received support with these grant funds. The services provided by these organizations cover many important and much needed areas, such as housing, counseling, peer mentoring, education, case management, suicide prevention and suicide prevention training, assisted therapy, employment, financial security and stability, referrals to follow-on treatment services, legal counseling, and many different types of therapeutic services such as yoga, art, or music therapy. DMVA is committed to continually partner with other agencies and stakeholders to ensure that Pennsylvania veterans battling substance use disorder are provided with the services and programs available to assist them through their path to recovery. And as to close, I'd like to thank Penn State again for having us. And I would also like to thank DDAP for their support in allowing us to subgrant these dollars to our community partner. Through these partnerships, DMVA is able to make a difference in the lives of our service members, veterans, and their families who battle substance use.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that information on available grants. And if anyone has questions for Jennifer, just please put them in the Q&A feature at your convenience, and we'll address them at the end. So our next speaker is Steve Barndt. Steve is the Executive Director of Just for Today Recovery and Veterans Support Services. Steve worked in sales for many years before becoming the Regional Director for a home medical supply company. After years of traveling, being away from home, and the trials and tribulations facing most of us throughout active addiction, Steve decided his life needed a drastic change of direction. He checked himself into Gudenzia's Common Ground Detox, an inpatient facility in Harrisburg, and to this day credits them with saving his life. As his vision for a recovery center slowly unfolded, Steve continued working part-time at Common Ground while moving all the pieces into place to build his dream. At one time, under Steve's direction in the early 2000s, JFT operated recovery houses in Harrisburg, Gettysburg, and Mechanicsburg, as well as a thrift store in Middletown to make ends meet. Luck, hard work, or divine intervention, depending on your beliefs, took hold, and Steve was awarded a startup grant from Capital Area Behavioral Health Collaboration to purchase the property in Lemoyne. Steve began a male recovery house above the center, added the veteran services in 2014, and acquired a women veterans recovery house in Harrisburg, slated to open in March 2019. Recently, JFT was awarded grant funding from Cumberland Perry Drug and Alcohol Commission to initiate the Warm Handoff program in our three county hospitals, Carlisle, West Shore, and Holy Spirit. And with the Warm Handoff media coverage by word of mouth and through referrals, JFT has helped as many people coming in off the streets acquire some type of treatment, as we have straight from the emergency rooms. Okay, Steve.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today and do this so important subject. So just a just quick brief introduction again. Yes, I'm Director of JFT Recovery and Veteran Support Services. We operate 3 centers at this point throughout central Pennsylvania, dealing with the core of substance abuse and then and addiction, and then also with our veteran services, which we found from the start sort of intertwined in with the services we are already doing. So this is a good topic. And it's going to break it down real quick. There's Scott's coming up behind me, my veterans coordinator, really explain it a little more what we do at JFT. I'll sort of hit the highlights and what we sort of found and why we do what we do here. But we look at things here. There's the addiction, and then there's a recovery process. With veterans, and Jennifer, touched on it, at the start too. It's a coping mechanism. A lot of times with PTSD, really triggers that, and just the stress of the situations our veterans are put in and have gone through or are going through. So you have the addiction part of it, which is very similar to everybody else's. That part doesn't change. The physical, the mental addictions of that, but the recovery process can be a little different. And that's one thing we've, Scott and I, we found here as we've been, going on, some of the procedures and the way we go about, working with somebody in that recovery process, as far as getting help, meetings, or whatever it might be, is a little different than when we work with our veterans. And it's just, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, I think it's the process of being a veteran and, what you're taught, to do. And it makes it a little harder, I think, to, at least in my experience, get that openness. So that's where the real key is. And it's one thing JFT has done and will continue to do. And Scott, again, will touch a little more in depth in those things to work with them. I think the biggest thing we do is we provide a face, an actual voice to somebody, a veteran that is looking, for that. That's the challenges we found, when you're dealing as veteran recovery and the PTSD, a lot of times that's the primary, what you see. And then you got to get down to the actual drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever it might be. And like I said, it's a tough process, and we tried to do some things here to get through that and break through that. A couple things we found, JFT, working with our veterans is, some of the barriers and challenges that are out there. I just discussed a little bit being open I mean, I'm gonna paint with a broad brush, but I mean, we find our veterans aren't, when it comes to the recovery support groups, as supportive. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not painting with a broad brush there. There are some, but and it's understandable, as we look at it, that being a veteran, we've found that in recovery, we say one addict helping another addict, so that parallel, and the same, I believe, with the veteran also when it comes to that. So we try to open that mind. We bring people in maybe through our food service that we offer here at the military share, and that's opened the door to a lot, to open that door up for possible help. And again, Scott will talk a little more about that. Jennifer touched on, and this whole project that Life Unites Us is the stigma. I know things have changed over the years, but there was a time where drug addiction wasn't, veterans, some of the stories I've heard, that were afraid to go get help under that situation, and because of the penalties possibly that could come with it, and didn't feel they could come out with it. And I guess that sort of falls under a stigma a little bit, there also. So again, it's continuing to fight that stigma. I know there's been some changes, and that's opened up, some doors have opened up in that area. So, but that's something we have found too, to just open up and talk about it. A lot of conversations we have, or we'll talk about everything else but except that. And that's a big, the addiction or the alcoholism, whatever it might be, the addiction, the disease, to get to that and to address that. And it's good to see. I know the VA has a good program, and others that are really working to get through that. We try to do that here. Like I said, having a person here, having Scott here, other veterans have helped along the way with that process to talk with another veteran. It's okay. Another thing we found is just to trust the veteran. And again, I'm not painting with a broad brush here. I'm just the things we have seen here, but just the trust that we see with the veterans that, with the system that's set up, may come just from frustrations, phone calls, no answers, or just whatever it might be. But or whether it's in the VA system or in the government system, and just really don't have a trust for it. And again, that's something that needs to be changed. I think some things have been going that way for that. And but that's one thing we have. It's hard to break through, and when you do break through with a veteran, especially when it comes to, again, we're talking about addiction recovery today, it takes a lot. It takes a lot for any person to go through that and do that. And they need to have that trust. And some of my experiences, I've found that that's a big issue, that whether it's letting others know, they just that trust, it's just something I've seen over the years that we've been doing this. I think some of that might come out of frustration, and again, I know things have gotten better with the VA and the systems like that, but it's just a frustration. They would call somewhere and just endlessly be on the phone. And it's one thing we wanted to do with JFT, and Scott's been great with it here, that if a veteran calls in, he's at least talking to him person to person or her, and are getting the veteran inside our building, where we can really build that rapport. So that's something we have seen, and we try to do here at JFT to get past that. I believe also it's just a general frame of mind. Again, I'll let the veterans talk more about that, but I mean, just that general frame of mind that you're part of a unit, you have the camaraderie, but also you need to pull your weight, and you don't want to be the weak, that's considered the weak link, or whatever word you want to use there with that. And so I think that, as with Holden, my experience, somebody I've talked to, and really it's not a weakness, it's an illness, and could come from different directions with the veteran, but it's something that can be dealt with and don't have to be ashamed of, and it's okay to ask for some help, especially like that. I think Jen talked about too, that transition, coming from that. And it's one thing we found here, and everything we try to do at JFT is to address that transition period when a veteran comes out. experiencing, things that we help with, that has helped that transition period, to keep them from that end. If they have a little problem with drugs or alcohol, or a big problem, or the suicide, obviously, the veteran suicide, that transition period's hard. And it's really an issue, an area that we're looking at. Scott will get into that a little bit, to help that process upstream, that the veteran doesn't get downstream into those situations. So and I'm going to touch on, Scott. We were talking a little bit about a farming project that JFT's starting to be down in the Southwest York County area, down outside of Spring Grove, Hanover. And again, to help along with these issues, working with York County Veterans Affairs, Terry, down there, to start a farming program, basically greenhousing and gardening, to start with, and then maybe a market, and then take it from there a few years down the road into the restaurant. But the whole goal is just, getting our veterans out there to a little farmette, little area out there, and working in the dirt, working on something other than, up in their head, with things. And we're real excited about it. It's a start, that we can go with it, and then the wraparound services we can provide along with those. And who knows, maybe in the animal therapy, and just, it's wide open. Family, helping the families of veterans too, again, with this transition. It's hard on all of them, on everybody. So we're really excited about that. And the real twist to that program is that we have worked with a corporation down here that has a house that was built in 1750, the Hoke House. And you can come to JFT, you can learn more about that. But it's that was up for demolition unless something could be done. We negotiated with the owners and were able to get the opportunity anyway we have to move that house off that lot and move it to a descendant's farm and put it on some farmland. And again, use this building with our veterans, the whole way through the process, taking some ownership along with the renovations, the move, and then also, like I said, as we open it up, provide some wraparound support services, for the veteran community in that area, and then all over where we can take veterans down to it. So we're real excited about that. And again, this is all stuff we can plug in this fight with, addiction, SUD, and we're really excited about that. And keep your eyes on that. It's going to be one of the bigger projects we've done, but I think will be one of our most valuable, projects that we've done. Just the sky's the limit on it. We're really excited with that. I know the veteran community down there is really excited already behind the project. So a lot to do, just again to bring that veteran through that process and let them know it's okay. It's like anybody we deal with in recovery. We have an illness. We're not horrible, bad people, and we haven't let anybody down. Well, we haven't in our actions, but we haven't. And we can come through this, together with the help. So that's all I have with that. I was echoing Jen a little bit there, but that's that. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Definitely interested in hearing more about that farming greenhouse project. That sounds really interesting and helpful. So please feel free to put any questions for Steve into the Q&A feature. Next up, we're going to hear from Scott Young. So Scott is JFT's Veterans Service Coordinator and a veteran himself. He served in the United States Marine Corps from 2004 through 2016, being honorably discharged as a staff sergeant. Scott served 2 combat tours in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Additionally, he spent time in the community while on active duty, serving as a recruiter in the York area. Scott is active in recovery, being free of alcohol for over 6 years. His journey included a successful stay at the Substance Abuse Residential Rehabilitation Treatment Program at the Lebanon VA Medical Center, where he participated in the vocational rehabilitation program as well. He's also a graduate of Dauphin County Veterans Court. In addition to his service as JFT's Veterans Service Coordinator, Scott has been a business administration and management student for 5 years. He enjoys reading, hiking, and cooking in his spare time. I'm going to turn it over to Scott, who is going to share some slides.
All right. Thank you to Penn State for allowing us to be here today and share some of our story, what we do here at JFT. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail with what Steve was talking about. So I'll share this. I kind of like a little bit of animation here. We can have some pictures. Um, Before I really get into what JFT does, though, we're going to talk a little bit about military and veteran culture because it affects the way we work with veterans in recovery. So, I mean, first of all, we have all of our service branches, and at JFT, we deal with veterans from every service branch, and some of them are prior active, some of them are reserves, National Guard, and we have not come across a Space Force vet yet. They're still pretty new. Once we do, we will work with them. Okay, so when we talk about culture, and again, I'm going to hit this very briefly. Every veteran has been through basic training. You may know it as boot camp, and this is important because it is one thing that we all have in common. Now, the branches may have their separate methods, but the fact of the matter is this is seen as a rite of passage. And you'll hear veterans, especially when they get together, whether they're in recovery or not, they get comfortable with each other. There's always those boot camp stories that go across eras. They're comparing notes. But one thing that boot camp is not is it is not a weeding out process. That's what recruiters do. Boot camp is training, but for those of you that were not military before, the best way I can equate it to the civilian world is the recruiting process is sort of the interview process, and basic training is the orientation. And if you want to throw in job training, most of us we go through our orientation for 3 to 6 months, sometimes up to a year. Now, of course, there's the big one that some of you are aware of, deployments. This is why the military exists, basically. We go out and do all kinds of things, defending freedom throughout the world, if we want to talk about it that way. But I mean, the bottom line is we're away from home for long periods of time. And with that, I mean, there are unique experiences. I mean, you see there we have combat, we talked about PTSD. I'll get into that a little bit later. That's one of the main causes of that. There are humanitarian deployments. Now that kind of gets missed a little bit sometimes. I mean, locally, we have our National Guardsmen that might be activated, let's say if there's a flood or a natural disaster, but especially our Navy vets, if there's a tsunami somewhere out in sea, they'll go out there and they'll respond to that. You can see some really horrific things doing that, and that's one of those sort of under the radar sources of trauma that we don't talk about. But then if we also talk about, again, you're away for a long period of time, you miss some milestones back home, and some vets carry regret for missing the birth of a child, or maybe they didn't make it home for grandma's funeral and they regret that. The other thing, though, with these deployments, especially a combat deployment, is you see in the bottom right there, hypervigilance becomes the norm. So, if you're sort of in an elevated state of awareness for 6 to 8 months at a time and you come back home, that's probably going to never get back down to that pre-deployment level. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, we're talking about when we are vets. We know about these national resources. We have the VA, the VFW, DAV. Here at the state level, we have the DMVA. JFT, we're sort of a community level organization, and the VA is kind of pushing things out to those of us in the community, and we're glad to take that torch to help these vets. Veterans, what you're seeing right there, hey, we're all patriotic. We can be a little different to those who have not served. Many of us have, Steve hit on it, we have trust issues, especially at first. We have a dark sense of humor, and we can be vulgar. You'd ask Steve, I'm professional 90% of the time. Not always. Now, one of the things I'm going to point out is right there, very direct. We tend to like to make our point and move on, with whatever it is we're doing. Now, when we're dealing with veterans in recovery, I have found that this is not always the case. Once they finally decide to open up and trust somebody, there's a tendency to be very indirect and kind of have to tell the whole story in the lead up. And it's kind of an interesting thing that I thought about it, and I myself experienced it. So that's something to keep in mind if you're working with veterans who are trying to open up. All right, and of course, veterans. This is why we're here today. We are in recovery. There's a lot of us that have abused substances. Alcohol is still the number one substance for veterans to abuse, but we are seeing with stimulants and opiates an increase. There a pretty fair amount of the vets that come in here, again, still majority. It was alcohol, but there are actually groups that they get together and they talk about their experiences with the opiates, a lot of meth, and there's a fair amount of cocaine. I'm seeing a lot of vets comment on cocaine lately. One thing I would like to note with veterans in recovery before I move on as well. So if you've worked with anybody that's in addiction, we adapt very well. We adapt our behaviors around getting the chemical that we need. We adapt our behaviors to the point where we don't think other people know what we're doing. Veterans, that you can see this really, it's powerful in veterans. Why? Because we are hardwired to adapt during our military service. We're very mission oriented, and so you got to figure when the mission is to get that next drink, to get that bundle. We're very determined. So it's one thing to keep in mind. And of course, we also heard Jen and Steve talk about it. Usually there's something, mental health going on that kind of, augments that addiction. It might be the source of that addiction. We all know about PTSD, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Anxiety is a big one, but we see this a lot. Pretty much, I'm not going to say every vet. Most of the vets that I work with here at JFT, they have something going on, whether it stems from the military service or not, besides their addiction. All right, now let's talk about the big one, PTSD. You see a lot of those symptoms here. We're kind of this is what we see with a lot of vets. I want to point out thrill-seeking behavior. That one is one that I've come to find is common among us and the first responder community. Sort of that adrenaline junkie thing. You won't necessarily see that with a civilian that has PTSD because of abuse, so to say. What we are not talking about with veterans with PTSD is, Uncle Marty in the trees looking for the Viet Cong. That's that kind of thing. That's Hollywood. Isolation is much more the norm. Organizations such as us, you're going to talk to Angel hear from Angel from the Y, the Vet Center, in Harrisburg. We'll tell you these. A lot of the people where we're talking about, they'll isolate. They'll be up in like Huntington County. They'll be living down in the basement. They don't come out that often, and usually it's the family members or, unfortunately, the law that pushes the veteran to get help first. I'm going to borrow, speaking of the Vet Center, Rick Britton, who's currently the director there. Two of these little phrases I am borrowing from Rick, and I'm sure that they're not original. PTSD is a normal response to an abnormal experience. And at the bottom, PTSD is not an excuse to be a jerk. Rick used more colorful language. When I'm being unprofessional, so do I. But we have to remind our vets of that that what you're going through is what can be expected considering what you have gone through. And no, it's not an acceptable reason to to lash out. And of course, it is not curable. This is something that we have to manage for the rest of our lives. But with the right tools and the right community support, you can. And that's where we come in here at JFT. So we've already touched on the support groups a little bit. I'll go into more detail with that. The food share, again, and we have housing upstairs specifically for vets. Events and food. We're actually doing a veterans luncheon with the Marine Corps birthday cake cutting on Thursday. We also have holiday things, mentoring and coaching. I mean, if it's not me, we also have other CRSs that provide recovery coaching for veterans in recovery. A lot of opportunities to volunteer here. That's actually how I first came involved in here. Became involved with JFT. And I would say more than half of our volunteer corps right now is made up of veterans in recovery. It kind of speaks to what we talk about. I mean, I heard Jen say at the beginning, having a purpose and camaraderie. Well, in recovery, it's called fellowship. Camaraderie means basically the same thing. It's just what veterans sort of prefer to call it. And of course, we have access to other veteran organizations and benefits. Angel will tell you a little bit more later about the veteran coalition we established. But if we don't do it here at JFT, I can find somebody that does. All right, military food share. So this is our partnership with Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. This is maybe the most important thing we do for veterans here. Besides what we do to directly support a veteran in recovery, because food is a basic need, and it's a great way to break down the trust barriers that are put up. A veteran builds rapport because we're giving them food after, say, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Maybe they'll ask a question, and I'll find out they've never applied for VA benefits before, so we can help them out with that. We've had veterans that start asking questions. It turns out that their family members in addiction, maybe not a vet, but we can get their family member into treatment. We've got veterans into treatment who have been a part of the military food share. Close to 70% of the veterans that have participated in the military food share, past or present, have either gotten another service here or we referred them to another community organization to help them out. So, I mean, it's one of my favorite things we do here. Okay, our PTSD support group and our heroes group. Aside from the regular recovery meetings we have here at JFT, we have AA, we have NA, we have some Dharma recovery. We have specifically a PTSD support group for veterans. Now, it's facilitated by a licensed counselor who is himself a vet, retired Army major, served in every conflict from Panama through the Gulf War, Bosnia, Afghanistan, and then OIF, the second invasion of Iraq. So he's been there, done that. The cool thing about this group is that the trauma does not have to be directly related to military service. So the Vet Center is a great resource, but to attend a group or get counseling there, you need to have either been boots on the ground in combat or be a victim of military sexual trauma. Our group, hey, the only requirement is you're a veteran and you have trauma. And you can come in. Sheldon's a great counselor. Runs that group very effectively. Heroes, we started that a few years ago. So that is veterans, first responders, and their family members. It's a peer group. Now we find that first responders, there's a lot of overlap there. A lot of first responders are veterans, and even those that aren't, I mean, they tend to deal with the same demons in terms of addiction, PTSD, which is really the concentration of this group. Pretty much everybody in this group, whether they're veteran, first responder, or one of the family members, has at least one of those things. And we end up doing a lot of things together outside the group. That's something that that we started just shot in the dark a few years ago. That's kind of maintained a steady following. And our new initiative, the Veteran Fairweather Lodge Housing. So we have had veteran housing upstairs for a little while now. However, we're changing the model to get into Fairweather Lodge a little bit. I mean, it's more community based, and the veterans upstairs kind of try to form a family. Now, we've always had structure for them, but there's more of a focus on, you know, working together and working out in the community, and there's a broader network throughout the state that's connected to it for support. But it's also employment focused. Again, we're talking camaraderie and having a purpose. I mean, that's important for anybody in recovery, but it's especially important for vets. And we're excited to be starting this. We've already connected with all the coordinators within Pennsylvania, and the program coordinator, getting some good pointers on how to make our program even better for our male veterans upstairs. But yeah, that's aside from the forum, which Steve kind of hit on that more, that is really what we do for veterans. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks, for giving us a lot of information on how you're supporting and providing services to veterans in our area. So feel free for anybody who has questions to put those in the Q&A, and we will get to them in just a moment. So our final speaker is Angel McLaughlin. For more than 10 years, Angel has served in a variety of roles assisting marginalized, underserved, and at-risk individuals seeking assistance with the care and management of their mental wellness and recovery needs. In her role as advocate, counselor, and caregiver, Angel remains committed to helping individuals achieve their highest level of wellness and stability in all aspects of their lives. As a licensed substance abuse counselor, Angel has provided care in a number of settings, including a therapeutic community for the Maryland State Correction System, residential women's substance abuse treatment services, residential psychiatric rehabilitation services for individuals with severe and persistent mental illness and a co-occurring substance use disorder, many of them forensic mental health patients. In her current role, Angel serves as the clinical coordinator for the Veteran Opioid Support Services program through the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, State Opioid Response Program within the YWCA of Greater Harrisburg's Veterans Services Department. Angel received her bachelor's in psychology from Pennsylvania State University and her associate degree in addictions counseling from Anne Arundel Community College. She's a current graduate student at Messiah University in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program. Angel holds a certified alcohol and drug counselor license with the Pennsylvania State Certification Board. Angel is committed to serving veterans in any way she can and advocates for veterans in her roles on multiple veteran-specific councils, boards, networks, and coalitions. So, Angel, welcome.
Thank you. So I wanted to take a little bit of time today and go over some of the newer alternative treatment methods that both the VA and civilian providers are now offering. Some of these are more focused towards the mental health side of things, but with that being said, anything that improves mental health will improve, the ability for people to get into recovery from their substance use. So one of the first ones I wanted to talk about was the ketamine infusion for treatment-resistant depression. So ketamine infusion has been shown to help veterans specifically with decreasing thoughts of self-harm, hopelessness, depression, and has helped enhance their overall quality of life. Suicidal ideation was also significantly reduced. And this information is from a study that was done in the Little Rock VA clinic a couple years ago. So 70% of their veterans that went through this ketamine infusion program showed more than a 50% reduction in their PHQ, which is their depression screening. And that was just after the induction period. So with repeated infusion treatment, 86% of the veterans showed significant improvement in their treatment-resistant depression due to the enhanced therapeutic benefit of the ketamine. among the veterans with their baseline suicidal ideation, 56% of them exhibited a decrease in their SI after their ketamine therapy induction phase. The veteran does have to have a diagnosis of treatment-resistant depression, and a VA healthcare provider is, if they're having the treatment done through the VA, is the only person that can refer them for that. So any veteran that would be interested in pursuing this method of treatment would just need to talk to their VA provider. There's also many civilian providers that offer it as well. So if they wanted to use some form of insurance at a different civilian provider, they would be able to do that too. It is not able to be used for certain mental health conditions. They are part of the exclusion criteria. So for people with like schizophrenia or psychotic disorders and things like that, they unfortunately are not eligible to be able to use this. But anybody with the regular treatment-resistant depression would be able to do that. Next alternative treatment I just want to give a short overview on is MDMA assisted treatment for PTSD. And I know that kind of sounds scary when we're talking about substance use here, but if you frame it in the way of thinking of it as medication assisted treatment, it's a short-term medication that's being used to help augment therapy. So MDMA is not a classic psychedelic, it's an entactogen or an empathogen. And so what that does is that decreases fear and defensiveness. It increases feelings of well-being. It increases their ability to trust. And it has enhanced empathy, compassion for self and others, pro-social feelings, connectedness, and increased introspection and acceptance and insight. So that sounds like the optimal conditions for working on trauma therapy. And so MDMA, when they use it, they have 3 8-hour sessions. Those are 3 to 5 weeks apart, and they have a 2-person therapy team. Therapy includes 12 non-drug 90-minute therapy sessions, which they use for preparation and then to integrate the trauma with the assistance of the medication. So this treatment method kind of lifts the veil for the veteran to be able to make more significant progress in treatment. So it's not meant to be used as a standalone medication or a long-term medication. It's meant for very short usages, but it's to kind of give you that jump start on, the trauma therapy side of things. And so that can be utilized alongside things like cognitive processing therapy or prolonged exposure therapy, which are kind of the gold standard for treating PTSD. Study that was done at the Bronx VA Medical Center. So at 2 months after treatment, 56% of veterans no longer met the criteria for PTSD. And at 12 months, 67% of veterans no longer met the criteria for PTSD. So those are some pretty significant improvements that these veterans made with this alternative treatment. Next one, so transcranial magnetic stimulation for major depressive disorder. So this is a device that generates a strong momentary magnetic field. This field kind of is aimed at the part of the brain that regulates mood. And so the magnetic field passes through the scalp and skull and activates those brain skills. On a study that was done with one of the VAs, they had 22 patients to start. The average PHQ-9 score was 18.27, and after treatment, it was 8.7. So they dropped almost 10 points between start and finish. 54% had positive remission, 27.3 had partial response, and 18.2 did not respond to the treatment. So more than half of the individuals who participated in this were had a significant improvement in their conditions. It is also a completely drug-free treatment option. So there is no, with TMS, it's just the machine itself. There's no specific medications or drugs or anything that are used in conjunction with that. Now, people who are currently on psychiatric medication would still be continuing to take their medication. But in using this treatment, you're not adding anything on top of what they're already taking. So that may be beneficial for a lot of people, especially ones that are on a lot of medications. And then last alternative treatment option. So I, and Scott kind of mentioned this. So I work in the Veteran Opioid Support Services program. It's here at the YWCA in Harrisburg. This program serves veterans across 7 counties in South Central PA who have been impacted by opioids or stimulants. We do that through intensive and comprehensive clinical case management. So we serve all veterans who have served, including National Guard and reservists. We help with everything from connecting them to resources for substance abuse, mental health, medical treatment, basic needs, employment, housing, education resources. And we also do ongoing clinical care coordination with all of the service providers and healthcare providers working with that veteran. So that is something, like Scott mentioned, having to tell your story over and over again kind of gets really obnoxious for a lot of veterans. And so the less they have to do that, the more engaged they are to stay in treatment. And so we kind of become the central information bank for the veterans we're working with. The program also takes a holistic approach to working with veterans. So while we are a substance abuse program, we focus on addressing the holistic needs of the veteran so that they can create and maintain a solid foundation in recovery. And then that is all I have for the alternative treatment methods. And then I just wanted to talk real quick about our Capital Region Veterans Coalition. The Capital Region Veterans Coalition was formed in 2021 by Scott Young, who just talked, and Ryan Allman. And then I came on a little bit later to help support all of the work that they were doing and get everything up and running. So we're a coalition of veteran service organizations, corporate partners, and individual veterans who are committed to helping our Capital Region veteran communities succeed. And so this coalition was formed to assist veterans and their families in bridging the divide between where they are currently and where they intend to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So members within the coalition intend to be the conduit and provide the necessary resources to empower the veteran affiliated community. The coalition has monthly hybrid meetings that includes presentations on services and programs available to veterans and their families. We also have several projects and events that we work on throughout the year, like every spring, summer, we have a Veterans Family Fun Day event that we put together, and it's a free event where veterans, service members, and their family can come and have a good day and check out some resources and on all of the programs and services in our area. We also accept requests for assistance. This is probably the most popular thing we do. You can actually go right on our website, which is crvetcoalition.org. And I will have all of that information sent out after the webinar. And that request for assistance, you just fill out the information, the contact, everything about the veteran and what they need. And then we send that out to our group and kind of crowdsource solutions for that. So we've done everything from getting people's lawnmowers fixed and trees cut down and helping veterans move. We've gotten veterans some gas cards or grocery cards and different things like that. So it really is not like a what's too big or small. We're going to try and find a way to help them regardless. And that is kind of everything I have. Scott, did you have anything to add as far as the coalition?
I think you nailed most of it. I mean, really what it is it's just a bunch of organizations sharing resources for the benefit of the veteran community.
Yep. Thank you. We also do have a durable medical equipment project that I run where we take donations of walkers, wheelchairs, rollators, stuff like that, and then we rehome them to veterans in need. So that is everything. And with that, I will pass it back to you. And thank you for letting me present today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to hear about advances in trauma therapy. So thank you to all of our presenters. I want to invite you back to maybe turn on your cameras and answer some questions. We really appreciate all your expertise and insightful presentations. So we have some questions in the Q&A. Actually, Scott's been answering a couple of them live as they've, or in the chat as they've come up. But I see, Angel, there's one here probably for you. A question about ketamine infusion. So do you know how long the ketamine infusion results lasted after ketamine infusions were discontinued?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Sometimes people do have to go back for boosters. But like as the data said, they did a 2-month and a 12-month follow-up. And so at 12 months, even more people did not qualify for PTSD diagnosis any longer. So that would, I mean, I would say at least a minimum of 12 months, but they also have the opportunity, if they feel like it's wearing off, to go back and get a booster infusion done.
Thank you. So Scott's been answering some questions in the chat just about some of the services that JFT offers. There was a question about whether JFT serves women vets, and he answered and said, yes, they serve all veterans, including women. He also gave some information about where their office and recovery housing is located, which is in Lemoyne. And there was also a question about whether people are coming from other areas of the state, like Pittsburgh, and Scott did answer that, yes, they do occasionally get people from outside of the area. So there's a question here about resources in the Philadelphia area. Does anybody perhaps have any information about resources in the Philadelphia area for veterans?
So there's actually a lot of resources in Philadelphia, and I know that I think at least 2 of the alternative treatment options I discussed, I believe it's ketamine and TMS, are both available in Philly. But they have also you have the Delaware Valley Veterans Coalition out there as well. And Scott, you look like you had something to add.
Not to the Philadelphia one. I was answering another question.
Yeah, and I can hop in there too and add, I'm not exactly sure what type of services specifically you're asking for Philadelphia, but we have partnered with many organizations in the Philadelphia area that do provide a large array of services to veterans. So we can certainly provide some additional information on some of those organizations. If you have specific questions regarding what types of services, please share those with us so we can certainly share some information with you as well.
So it looks like Angel provided some more information about services in the Philadelphia area in the Q&A. Doesn't look like we have any more questions here right now. Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add? Because we're coming up to the end of the hour. Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for their attendance and participation in today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, after you leave the webinar today, you will be automatically directed to a survey. Please take just a few minutes to complete the survey to let us know what we did well or can improve on and your thoughts in general. Thank you and take care.